Hello, everyone. Hello, Jenkins World. Thanks for coming for this talk. And I am Manivanan, and I am part of developer experience team at PayPal, where we build end-to-end developer experience for all the developers at PayPal. And specifically, I'm part of continuous integration as a service team at PayPal, where we provide continuous integration environment for all the developers at PayPal. Now, in this talk, I'm going to talk to you about how we started, how we used to operate basically the legacy, and how we evolved in our continuous integration journey, how we started and how we evolved. And if you're asking me why I have this title, Reincarnation of Docker Containers with Past Life Memory, even I am wondering why I had this title. But I think I have the explanation somewhere in 351 slide. I'll walk you through it. So before we started our continuous integration journey, this is how we looked. It took several hours to build our code, and it took several hours to deploy our code. People would start their build, and they would even go to sleep, come back in the next morning to see that their build has failed, and they have to start over again. This is how it was. And there were some 28 easy steps for you to get your code to production. So that's how it was. And we wanted to change from there, and we wanted to get the production code from ideation to production as soon as possible. That's why we started continuous integration. And we started with Jenkins. Now, why we started with Jenkins? Because it is free software. It is not free as in free beer, as Richard Stallman quotes. It is free as in freedom. Like, I can look at Jenkins code. There is nothing hidden. I can change the code, and I can contribute back to the open source. That's why we choose Jenkins. So when we started with Jenkins, just a couple of months, the next thing we knew was there was 40,000 Jenkins jobs. And it was running 13,000 builds a day. Sorry, 12,000 builds a day. And we had one big Jenkins master with hundreds of slaves statically connected to the Jenkins master. And we had monster machines which run the monolithic code base, which was 40 million lines of code, which compiles in half an hour. So soon we realized this model is not going to scale. We were overloading too much. Jenkins was almost crying. So change management was really difficult. So when we wanted to roll out some change to Jenkins instance, we had to disrupt. So in the other slide, I told you we were running 13,000 builds a day, right? Assume we will be running 1,000 builds at any given time. We would be interrupting thousands of builds to roll out of change. And there was no freedom. So as DevOps of PayPal, we value freedom very much. We wanted to provide freedom to our developers and empowerment, which we value very much. But with this single Jenkins instance, we weren't able to provide the freedom. So when they want a new plugin, they had to come to us, and we had to install it for them. And during the installation, we had to go through the disruption of running jobs, and they had to start over again. Although Jenkins was doing a fair job in using the resources efficiently, but still it was inefficient. I mean, when there are no builds running in Jenkins, we couldn't use those slaves in any other workload. It was still connected to Jenkins, and the executors were staying idle. And plugins didn't scale. So since we had 40,000 jobs, most of the plugins that we took were not scaling up to that level. We had memory leaks, or it would bring down Jenkins itself. So that is when we decided to move away from single Jenkins instance to federated model. So we had our in-house cloud based on OpenStack. So we moved from the single instance to federated model. How we did that was, if you are a PayPal developer, we would provide you a virtual machine with Jenkins installed on top of it. So users loved it. This provided them freedom. They were able to install their plugins, experiment with their Jenkins. They were admin to their Jenkins. They could do anything they want. Developers were really happy. But as DevOps, what we saw was at one point of time, we realized we have given out 2,500 VMs like that. And you see, out of this 2,500 VMs, only 10% were really used. And out of those 10%, hardly a couple of builds a day. Rest of the time, these VMs were sitting idle. So as DevOps, we were not happy. We wanted to utilize the resources as efficiently as possible. Now, we wanted to preserve, although we wanted to utilize the resources as efficiently as possible, we also wanted to preserve the freedom that we gave for the developers. So that is when we came up with a model with Jenkins on Mesos-based infrastructure. Now, instead of one VM per Jenkins master, we basically shared the VM to host multiple Jenkins masters. So we would basically spawn a lightweight Jenkins master with less resources for 0.2 CPUs and 1 gigabyte of memory. And so as you know, Jenkins master has to be a long-running task. So if you want to spawn it in Mesos, you should use a scheduler like Aurora to keep the Jenkins master up and running all the time. So if it goes down on a VM, you ought to bring it back on another VM. So we used Aurora scheduler to do that. And we spawn Jenkins slave only when there is a demand. So demand, I mean, whenever the user goes and clicks build on his Jenkins, we would create slaves on the fly using Jenkins Mesos plugin. And the build will be done. After the build is complete, the resources will be given back to Mesos again. Now with this approach, so we also used flavors of slaves based on the application stack that we use. So this is how resource utilization looked with Mesos. So users loved it because they had their freedom. As DevOps, we also loved it because we use resources optimally. So we were able to solve the same problem, but cut down our operating cost by 10 times by using the Mesos-based solution. Of course, we were the first one to build a Mesos-based infrastructure for Jenkins. As you can see, before Mesos, we were using 24,000 CPUs, and after Mesos, we just used 2,400 CPUs. Same is with disk or RAM. So how many of you use Mesos? OK, thanks. So I'll tell you what Mesos is and why we use Mesos in 251 slide, I believe. OK, so still we had some challenges. Although we were able to cut down on the resources, we still had some inconsistency in build environments. Like the user would say, the classical DevOps problem, right? It works in my box. Why does it break in CI system? And there were inconsistent build environments within the CI system. So we used Ansible to roll out the changes. So we had Mesos slaves, and these slaves, we expect the tools that are required to spawn Jenkins or to run the builds installed on them. And we roll out, when there is a new tool request, we roll out the tool to all the slaves that are sitting in the Mesos cluster. So assume Ansible is doing the rollout, and if the virtual machine goes down for some reason, and it comes back up, during the time the VM went down, right, when we run the update. So that VM would be missing the update. It won't be having the tool set that we install, basically. And although we use Mesos to spawn, to use fine-grained resource to allocate our Jenkins master task or Jenkins slave task, there was still a problem that one build might be using up all the CPU, leaving the other builds that are running in the VM starving. And it was really difficult to provide conflicting toolset for different technology stacks. In PayPal, we use different app stacks, for example, Java, Node.js, Python, Scala, you name it. We have our apps running in almost all the languages. And rollout of new tools to the build environment was really difficult because so users would come and request us for the new tool. So for example, if a new version of Maven comes, users would request for the version of Maven. So we would actually take the request and we'd have to install it on the slaves, all the Meso slaves before people can start using that. This was really a difficult process that we wanted to overcome. Now, this problem, we solved it with Docker. Now, why Docker? So we can provide task isolation, the problem we talked about in the previous slide, where tasks stepping on each other. We can avoid that by constraining the resources that we provide to the container. I can say this container should use only one CPU and 4 gigs of memory. And if that container starts using more than that, Docker will make sure it kills it. And it eliminates the dependency on the host. So although we were running CI infrastructure on Mesos, we were not 100% cloud until we started using Docker, because we expected the Meso slaves to have tool sets installed in them. And reproducibility was very difficult. Sorry, before Docker, it was very difficult. With Docker, we can just spawn up the container and run the build again and reproduce it easily. And portability, of course, you build your Jenkins container, be it master or slave, you can run it in any machine, you don't depend on anything. All you need is Docker to be installed there. And containers by themselves are immutable, so it provided an advantage, but still we ran into some problems because of that. So I'll tell you about in the future slides. So these are the advantages which I told in the previous slide itself. So we had a consistent environment because the containers were immutable, and so we basically eliminated the need for the tools to be installed on the slave. And Docker provides task isolation. And with the main advantage that we had when we moved to Docker-based solution was that before that, our Mesos cluster was dedicated only for the CI system. No other workload can land on the box because we had all the tools installed there. So now we don't expect the tools to be installed on the slaves. So any other workload like dev staging workload can exist in the same Mesos cluster. So if you see Jenkins slave, it was easy to provide conflicting OS toolset requirements in a polyglot environment. So if you are a Node.js developer and you ask for a new version of Node, we can give a new Node.js container with the version of Node.js that you request for. And it was easy to roll out updates. So no more running into the problem of one VM doesn't have the update. And other workloads can easily exist in Mesos cluster, which I told in Jenkins master. So, and of course, again, the freedom for users. Users can extend from the Docker image that we provide, and they can build their own build environment, bake their own build environment, basically. They don't have to wait for us. Of course, we have some checks around it, but people are free to extend the container that we had. Now to go over the architecture, so when I talked about legacy, I told you there were 28 easy steps to get your code from idea to production, right? Now we have a self-service tool. So where you can go and create an app stack of your choice. So you don't have to start from scratch. You just go to that self-service tool, say, I want Java app stack, for example. It has different app stack, Java, Node, Python, and there is a custom app stack which you can say whatever language you want. So what this self-service tool will do is it will create your Hello World application. It will create a GitHub repository for you. It will create a user stage for you to do the testing. And it will create a CI for you where we come into picture. And it will create a production pool even where you can deploy to production. Now, this whole architecture comes into picture when the self-service tool actually requests for CI. And CI API is the top orchestrating piece that we have, which is going to, it doesn't have any user interface on its own. All it has is a REST interface, which the self-service tool will be calling. So basically, yeah. So the self-service tool will tell CI API, hey, I want a CI, I want a Jenkins instance for this app stack, and here is the GitHub repository, and make sure you create the default jobs for this CI request. And CI API basically sends the request to Aurora. So here, I'll tell you what Aurora does. So Mesos is a clustering framework. So if you want to run your task, and if you want to allocate a specific resource to your task, you can do that with Mesos. So Mesos basically uses master-slave model. So you have a couple of machines. You install Mesos master on them. It becomes Mesos master. And you install Mesos slave on them. Slave gets connected to master. And Mesos basically uses Zookeeper for leader election. So at any given time, one will be leading master, and others would be standby. So if the leading master goes down for some reason, one of the standby Mesos masters become the leader. Now, why we have a Aurora on top of it is Aurora makes sure your task, whatever you spawn, is long running. So say you spawn a Jenkins master in a VM, and the VM goes down. So the Jenkins master, so Aurora will track, if you spawn the Jenkins master through Aurora, it will see that the Jenkins master went down, and it'll automatically bring up the Jenkins master task in another virtual machine. Now, going back to whatever we started, right? So there is a CA request. CA API talks to Aurora, and it asks for Aurora to create the Jenkins master task. And since Aurora is a framework, it will register to Mesos master. And in Mesos terms, the slaves would be sending resource offers. So say if there is a Mesos slave, it would be constantly telling Mesos master that, hey, I have 5 CPUs and 12 gigs of RAM. Are you interested in using it? And Mesos master is going to give the resource offer to the registered framework, which is Aurora here. And Aurora, since we have a CA request now, Aurora will see, okay, do I have a resource offer which matches the request that I got? If it matches the request, Aurora is going to tell Mesos to spawn the CI task that it gave. So once Mesos receives that request, it is going to spawn Jenkins master. Basically, since Jenkins master is containerized, it will end up in one of the virtual machines, and we don't have any dependency on the virtual machine because we run Jenkins master as Docker container. And as you see, we can share basically one Mesos slave to host multiple Jenkins masters. Now, okay, we brought up Jenkins master. How do we maintain the state? So we do an event-driven backup to object storage. So when you go and create a job in Jenkins master, it is going to trigger a backup, and this backup will be stored in cloud storage. So whenever there is a change, a backup will be triggered, and it'll be stored in the cloud storage. Now, say if a Jenkins master goes down for some reason, or a VM goes down, then what this Aurora will do is it will detect that Jenkins master went down, and it will try to spawn the task again. So the orchestrating script that we have will see that the CI is already created, and it will pull the backup from object storage, and it will recreate the Jenkins home directory. Since Jenkins stores all its state in file system, the Jenkins can come up with whatever backup it has. Now, this is Jenkins masterpiece. Now, how about Jenkins slave? Now, whenever, so the slave doesn't exist in Jenkins master unless you trigger a build. So when you trigger a build, Jenkins master is going to connect to Mesos. Since both are in Mesos, it might be confusing. So Jenkins master is spawned through Aurora, but Jenkins talks to Mesos using Mesos plugin, Jenkins Mesos plugin. So it registers itself as a framework. And Jenkins Mesos slave would be sending resource offers to Mesos master, and it will again be sending to Jenkins master. So once Jenkins master sees resource requirement, an offer that matches the slave requirement, it will create a slave in Mesos. So once the slave is created, it will run a build. Now, we also have a monitoring around it. So whenever a build is running in Jenkins, it will post the data to this monitoring tool. For example, when a build goes into the queue, it tells the monitoring tool, hey, I'm in queue now. And after it gets out of the queue, it puts an entry in the DevX database that I have left the queue now. And when the build is starting and when the build is ending, every time it talks to the dashboard telling that I am in this state. So why we do this is we would get real-time metrics. So at any given time, if I go to the dashboard, I can see what Jenkins instances are down now, or what are the build times now, what are the builds that are in queue, and if there is a queue, if there is a build in queue for more than configured time, we would get an alert. Before the user gets to know about it, we would know it. So that we can go and fix if there are some issues. And we use Mongo database to persist whatever the CI API state is. Now, this worked well, just that users had some issues, like since everyone has powerful machines now, they see the CI build is slower than my local machine. And since we spawn Jenkins slaves on demand, and we destroy the slave after the build is complete, users won't be able to look at their workspace after the build is complete. This is an important problem that we ran into. And this is a sample use case for a Maven build. So the total build time for when I start fresh was 4 minutes. And the time taken to clone the source code was 30 seconds, around 30 seconds. And to download artifacts was 3 minutes. So if you see in this 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 30 seconds is spent on cloning the source code and downloading the artifacts. So the actual compilation was just 30 seconds. Now, if we persist this workspace, so since we were Dockerized and all our workspace was within the container, every time it was a fresh workspace. It was first build, first build, first build, first build. So we didn't have the concept of second build. We didn't have the subsequent build since we were not persisting the workspace. But if we persist the workspace, we can save 3 minutes, 30 seconds out of this build, which would really make our developers happy. And the other thing we wanted to solve was how we can show the workspace. People want to look at their artifacts or their source code after the build is complete. How do we solve that problem? Okay, I think we are in the slide where I have the explanation for the title. Okay, So reincarnation of Jenkins Docker containers. Why I had this title? Basically, when you look up in the dictionary for reincarnation, it is rebirth of the same soul in a new body. Now, if you consider Docker container, if it goes down and it is recreated, it doesn't remember its state. So that is what we wanted to do. In case of a slave container, for a slave container, the state is workspace. How do we make the workspace be available for the new container? When the user triggers second build, we should be able to take the workspace that was used previously and give it to the second build so that it is faster. And of course, we also need to make sure Jenkins master is able to see the workspace even after the slave goes down. Okay, that's pretty simple. All we needed to do was create a NFS shared storage like NFS and mount the shared storage on all the Mesos VMs, Mesos slaves. And when Jenkins slave container is spawned, I'll make sure this NFS storage is mounted as volume to that container. Oh yeah, I can reuse workspace now. Is that it? Did we solve the problem? No. What if user uses the option of execute concurrent builds if necessary? What if there are multiple builds running for the same job? If it is an NFS storage mounted on different slaves, then it would be the same folder that the build will be using. I mean, multiple builds would be using. They would obviously step on each other. So how do we solve that problem? Okay, so basically we solved this problem in Jenkins Mesos plugin by differentiating workspace if there are concurrent builds that are running. So as I said, this NFS shared storage that we created will be mounted on all the Mesos slaves. Now assume this is Jenkins master, and when the user triggers build job A, Jenkins Mesos plugin is going to ask for a slave agent to do the build. And Mesos spawns the slave agent, and agent is online right now. Now that is when Jenkins workspace listener comes into picture. Now this workspace listener is going to, so once the agent is online, basically it is a container which has this NFS workspace that is mounted as a volume to this container. Now, what Jenkins workspace listener is going to do is, it's going to talk to Jenkins. Jenkins Mesos plugin also lives within Jenkins master. So just for the ease of explanation, I just separated it out. Now, it is going to ask Jenkins, is job A building already? Now, assume this is the first build that user triggered. There is no other build that is running for this job. So what workspace listener would do is, it will create a workspace with whatever the slave root is. Here, my slave root is myCI and workspace / the job name. We don't have any problem here. Now assume the user comes and triggers job A again while build number one is still in progress. Now this same cycle goes. Mesos plugin asks for an agent, and the agent comes online. It mounts the NFS storage as a volume to the container. But right now, if Jenkins workspace listener asks Jenkins if job A is building already, Jenkins is going to say that yes, build number one is in progress. Now what Jenkins workspace listener will do is, it will differentiate the workspace now. This is the classic Jenkins way of differentiating workspace if there are concurrent builds. Just that it doesn't work for distributed slaves. So what we implemented in Mesos plugin was to use the same strategy to differentiate the workspace if there are concurrent builds. So we'll just append at and to. So this goes up to, if there is a third build, it will use my CI workspace job A at 3. If build number 1 is complete, it'll build number 4 can start using this. So we use the same strategy to differentiate the workspace between concurrent builds. And also, we have the same NFS storage mounted to Jenkins master under the same Jenkins master. Since it is also running as a container, we mount the NFS storage as a volume to that container. Now, Jenkins master also knows where the workspace is. So we just need to make Jenkins master remember what the workspace directory is, so that it can look up the workspace and give it to the user even if the slave goes offline. So where we are today, we run, you might have attended Mohit's keynote yesterday. So today we run 5,000 Jenkins instances with 32,000 builds a day, and we have 1 million test cases that run every day, and we have 2,600 plus microservices, and we do thousands of deploy a day. So I'll show you a demo how our self-service tool works and how we differentiate workspaces using Jenkins Mesos plugin. Hopefully, the demo gods help us and the demo works. Okay, so as I said, I'll be interacting to CI API, which is our orchestrating engine, through REST interface. So here I'm going to use HTTP client to spawn up the Jenkins. So this is my CI name that I'm going to spawn. So I'm telling in the JSON what my app stack is. I'm the one requesting for the CI. So this whole thing will be done by the self-service tool. So just for showing the CI, I'm just showing how self-service tool is actually posting the request to CI API. So, sure. Better now? Thanks. So I tell them what my app name is, where my GitHub repository is, and where is my assembler, all those things. Now I'm going to post this request to CI API. Oh, it worked. Okay. Okay. So once I post this request, I can get the same request by sending a GET request so that I get a response what is happening right now. So you can see the response that CI provisioning is in progress right now. Is in progress. So while this is coming up, let's look at how we can run parallel builds with the NFS solution and how we can see workspace after the slave is complete. So let's name this job Agent Smith, since he is going to replicate himself and run multiple instances. Let's do an execute shell, echo. To differentiate the workspace, let's say the build number, which is going to be different for, let's echo the build number to a file, myfile.txt, right? Did I say okay, execute concurrent builds if necessary. Let us make a sleep so that this job is in progress while we trigger the second build or subsequent builds. So let's trigger this job now. That's in queue. If you see, there is no executors connected right now. So this guy is basically going to talk to Mesos, and he'll register as a framework and ask for resources. So once Mesos gives resource offers back to this Jenkins master, it is going to choose from the resource offer and create a slave from there. Okay, we've got a slave now. So if we go to this console output and see, okay, so you see it right now the workspace directory is my CI name, which is money testing 125 workspace slash agent Smith. Now let me go to the job again and trigger a build now. The second build has also picked up because we had slave connected already with two executors. Now this also has triggered. So if you see the workspace is differentiated right now, the second build runs with at2 so that they don't overwrite each other. Now let's kill this build. So as you see, since the slave is connected, you can look at the workspace now. You see number 2, right? Build number 2. We just echoed this on my file. I can see this. Now, what I'm really interested is, am I able to really look at the workspace even after the slave goes offline? So let's kill these builds and delete the slaves. Okay, I deleted the slaves. Now I have Agent Smith. Let's see workspace. Yeah, I can still see workspace. And you can see the build number 2. So at any given time, it gives the most recent workspace that is used. Now let's go back to the CI that we created earlier. Let's see if it is still in progress or it has created already. Oh, it's still in progress. So let's go to the CI. Okay, the CI is created, and it has created the template jobs that we have for the app stack that I requested, and the template jobs have already started building. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much I had. And what about future? So although we use NFS storage to persist workspace, the IOPS of NFS storage is much less than the real block storage or local disk. So we want to persist the same workspace in block storage so that we can attach or detach block storage on the VM and mount it to the container when the build or the container gets spawned. And also we are planning to work on short-lived Jenkins master. I mean, there was a talk about disposable Jenkins master, right? We want to try out the same thing where we spawn up Jenkins master only when the user goes and triggers a build. Other time, we don't want it running up and running. So we'll have to solve some interesting problems. What if we have a job that is scheduled to run every hour or every day? So how do we solve those problems? So those are the things we are going to concentrate about when we start working on short-lived Jenkins master. That's the future. And so these are my contacts. If you like the talk and if you think it's cool, these are my contacts. And if you think you made a mistake by spending 45 minutes here, it's all my boss Mohit's idea. He is sitting here if you want to catch a hold of him. Okay. Okay. Thank you. That's all I had. If you have any questions. Sure.
My question is really about storage and performance.
Yeah.
Did you guys end up sharding the NFS storage in order to get performance out of it?
Um,
Did you just use one giant NFS store?
we use one giant NFS store right now. Um, Actually, we are very fresh. Actually, we started this just couple of weeks. We just rolled out this feature a couple of weeks ago. I'm yet to contribute this back to Jenkins Mesos plugin. I'll cut a release probably this weekend so that you can try it out in Mesos plugin.
Okay. And then the second is, where do you store the credentials that you need, that developers might need to push to an artifactory?
Exactly, that's a good question. So we use an in-house key maker.
Repeat the question for the camera.
Oh, sure, sure. So, just repeating the question. So, what he asked was, how do we store credentials that are needed to push to repository or pull from GitHub repository? So, what we use is, so we don't have it like inside the container. I mean, we don't have it by default. We don't put credentials inside the container. So what we do is we have a plugin called AuthInject plugin, which is going to talk to an in-house keymaker tool, which will give the key, and this key gets injected when the build starts. And after the build is complete, it's going to forget the key. It is not available anymore. Yeah. Thanks. No, it's inside the workspace. Yeah. It basically we have made sure the private repository workspace within private repository within workspace as the default for all the jobs. Yeah. Yeah. The name of the plugin is Jenkins Mesos plugin. AuthInject plugin. Actually, we haven't open sourced it yet because it uses our in-house keymaker tool. So there are other plugins, and if there is interest on that, I'd love to work with you, and so that we can remove the dependency that we have with an in-house tool and help you open source it. Yeah. Yeah.
What is the real reason behind the disposal client agent slave? Because if you want to do the build, you might have the need to use the workspace or even the combined version of the previous one for incremental build, those kind of things. And here you keep deleting them, so you're going to do everything again and again. Why don't you just have the pool of the machine and then you keep rotating and refreshing the pool rather than disposing?
Okay. So just repeating the question. So his question was, why do we destroy slaves? Why do we use ephemeral slaves? Why don't we have it statically connected to Jenkins? That's your question, right? So basically, optimized use of resources. So we have multiple Jenkins masters, right? So how do we give slaves to this Jenkins master? So if we give static slaves to each Jenkins master, then we are not utilizing the resources properly, right? So only when you build, you need slave. After the build is complete, you don't need the slave anymore, right? It could be used for some other purpose. There could be some other workload in DevOps team, which could be using that virtual machine. So as DevOps, we should be using the resources optimally, right?
But the team itself can reuse the workspace and then reuse the combined version of the previous combined for incremental build.
Exactly.
So if you clean everything,
Right.
it will mean that the build time going to be longer every time.
Absolutely. So that's what I showed with persisting the workspace on NFS storage, so that the workspace is get connected when the slave comes online next time, and you can reuse the workspace.
So you don't have a problem with the storage, but you have problem with the spin up.
Right. No, maybe we'll connect. I'll connect with you offline. We can talk about that. Thanks. Sure. Sure. Just give. Yes. So Mesos plugin basically uses, so it has a feature where you can specify multiple labels and you can say what is your resource requirement for each label. So for example, if you have a heavy job, you can say heavy node, I want more resources for this particular label. And if you have a lightweight job, you can say it is a lightweight job and I just need much less resources for this job. So you can differentiate jobs with those labels. So we do the same thing within PayPal. So we allocate label based on the app stack. So Java builds might need more resources, or it differs case by case actually. We might need more resources for code base which is big, which had to do more I/O. We would give more resources for them, and which need much less, we would give less resources. I'm being told that time is over. I'd love to connect with you offline. Thank you so much for coming to this talk. Thank you.